Hello and welcome to MindShifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself from that file, page. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on it, it'll let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And we're greatly appreciative of anybody when they choose to do that, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just boatloads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. If you're able to join us live from 11 to noon Central Time, 5 days a week, all you need to do is tap into the Zoom app or the Zoom through your web browser, and you can call one of the numbers if you want to use your phone, or you can be in a web browser and open up a Zoom tab and then type in the meeting ID for this first hour, which is 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. And that'll put you in the queue to listen, and it'll have you muted if you are calling through a phone line. Then you just need to hit *6 to unmute yourself, and *6 will mute you again if you're finished with what you need to share, and we greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that. The comments, the questions, the testimonials, the requests for worksheets, they all add to the quality of these shows. And as we mention regularly, if you go to the highlight shows from the archives that Jeanie Ryce has curated out of the last 14 plus years, you'll see that almost every one of them is the result of people just like you calling in and asking a question. And so we'd be happy to have you join the ranks of those who have helped improve the quality of these shows. And we have plenty of time for that as we begin the hour today. And let us know. What are you thinking about? How is it landing for you as we're reading from the book A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg. This book has spoken to so many people on the internet show and in the support groups that this is the second time we're reading through it. And it's kind of in preparation for August 1st when the author, Christian Sundberg, has agreed to join us live for the MindShifters radio hour. And I'm looking forward to that, as I look forward to the third part of this book, which is talking about it's Christian responding to questions that he's received as he's done his presentations, as he's told his life story, as he's told about his memory that he had time before he chose to take on a physical body, where he was in the non-physical realm, right? In just consciousness as pure spirit. And from those memories and from the coaching he's gotten from other people, both in the body and people that he gets messages from the non-physical, he has decided to create this book as an offering. And he's clear about the fact that he doesn't have all the answers, and he's not presenting answers in the book as this is the final definitive message straight from God or anything. It's just the best he's got for making sense of his purpose in the world and how and why he's here and what he might do to make this experience in the physical realm of more benefit to him and those around him. And in a very practical sense, that's what I'm trying to support people in doing with this internet show and with the support groups. That's why I say at the beginning of the introductions to this show pretty much every time I do it, that we're here to help people learn how to use these tools to improve the quality of their life and relationships. And if it's a practical advantage to people to learn these tools, to learn the Reality Management Worksheet or the Mind Goal Management Worksheet or the 3 Early Memories of Conflict Worksheet or the Codependent to Interdependence Worksheet, then I want to help make that available to as many people as possible, because the more people actually use tools like that increase their sense of joy and compassion and satisfaction in life, the better the world is for that. Since, the core of a lot of these teachings is the realization that energetically we're all connected. So am I being a good steward of my mind energy, of the creative force that we call thought, of the emotional energy that I can create and choose and then radiate out into the field around me? If I've been given dominion over the energies that I can create and then share with the world, and if that's, the most powerful way that I can contribute to this life, to this experience, then I want to stay focused on that, and I want to be a good steward of that. I want to find ways to spend the tiniest fraction of time in my life in the negative emotional states, and I want to learn how to use the negative emotional states when they arise as an alarm system, as a course correction, as a Geiger counter or a compass for myself, to make sure that I put myself back on track to be creating and then contributing positively, positive emotions, positive actions, positive thoughts, both inside me and in my interaction with the people and things around me. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing here on the show. That's why we're reading the books we read when we read them and add commentary. And it is one of the absolute solid reasons that I continue to do the worksheet process and teach it to others, because in my process of paying attention to any negative emotional experience I have and owning completely that that's my own creation, it gives me the liberty to then choose differently, to choose to create a more loving, a more compassionate, a more joyful energy to this thing they call the quantum soup. Right? The life energy that we're sharing can be wide open and flowing and compassionate and joyful and blissful, as we're reading about in yesterday's essays, or it can be tight and tense and constricted, which is what we call the fear energy, or any of the stepchildren of fear, as an energy that has different flavors to it. And any of the negative emotions might be considered the stepchildren of fear. Bitterness, hurt, resentment, confusion, grief, etc. So, plenty of time for comment and question. And please remember, even if I'm in the middle of the first paragraph, if I start reading again and it comes to you, oh, wait a minute, I wanted to ask this, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. It is greatly appreciated whenever anybody does that. And that includes you. Yes, you, wherever you are listening to this. We appreciate the comments, the questions, the answers. Sometimes people have answers to some of these situations. So, where we left off in the reading yesterday was we had moved through the series of essays that he had pulled together under the theme of meditation. And we've read most of these, but here are two essays under the category heading of death. I don't believe we've read these yet. So the first one is titled, Death is Not the End. And Christian writes, from our physical perspective, death appears to be the end of the person. Our senses behold a body that is no longer animated by the spark of life, and we no longer can interact with the person in the ways that we know. What's more, we cannot typically see to the other side to have any certainty that the person continues on. So we linger with fear, doubt, and sorrow. To us on earth, death seems merciless and final. Something about that has me thinking back to the support group last night. We watched the second half of a DVD by Dale Allen Hoffman titled The Word. And in it, he's sharing a variety of different words from the ancient Aramaic and their meanings. And one of the confounding factors for us in trying to understand what were these great teachers of 2,000 years ago and 5 cultures removed from us, what were they actually saying? What was their message? And the problem is we're using a Western mind. We're using a language that has a nearly one-to-one correspondence or correlation between a word and an item. So we say the word pen and everybody knows you're talking about a writing implement. We say the word chair and everybody thinks, oh, this thing that allows you to sit raised above the ground. The issue is that back in the ancient Hebrew and the Aramaic, each of the letters they had in their alphabet would take sentences or paragraphs to explain in our language because they were vibrational frequencies, they were impressions, they were they carried levels of complexity that our words in our language simply don't. So what were these teachers trying to teach? Well, some of them were trying to teach that death is not the final end. When the body drops, there's still your essence. There is still this other world. The concept that came down to us as, you know, in my Father's house there are many mansions. There are many scholars who say what they're talking about there is that this level of physical existence is just one level of actuality, and that there are other ways to have consciousness be active without a physical body to arise within it. So Christian is writing here and says to us, death seems merciless and final, so we linger with fear, doubt, and sorrow. And then he goes on and says, but what has died is not the person. The only thing that has died is the constraints that the person agreed to be bound to temporarily, so that that person, that essence, that spirit could have the constraints to develop experiences it can't have without a body. He writes, the body and its crude limitations get dropped away. The old coat is cast off and the spirit is set free. He writes, death is not the end. It is a beautiful new beginning. Now, this is really difficult for us in a culture where we've developed so much negative thought and ritual around death, and we have this medical community which has their lifeblood, so to speak, their passion, their finances are all derived around keeping people alive for as long as possible. And it's from certain perspectives, it seems just ludicrous, right? Since for the most part, most people understand that the only thing that's absolutely inevitable for a human being after they come into physical form is that they will die. And so here's this thing that is the only absolute solid thing that we all are going to share, and we've turned it into one of the most horrible things, one of the most scary, one of the most negative, or, you know, we frequently associate it with pain, mental and emotional and physical pain. But these teachings that cut across many different cultures and thousands of years are trying to tell us that death is not the end. It's a beautiful new beginning. It's going home. It's a journey from the fog of the less real into the clarity of the more real. It's an awakening from the dream that we call the physical life. Christian goes on and says, for those of us still dreaming, there's an absence of a person from the dream, and we can use that to generate deep pain. Now, I'm saying it as we can use that to generate deep pain. Christian says it brings us deep pain. I have some discussion with him about that maybe in August, because the core of the work we're teaching and the core of the great teachings that resonate most deeply with me all say I'm the one that creates my experience of pain. I'm the one that labels a sensation experience as either intense or exciting or terrifying or painful or uncomfortable. I'm the one that labels it. I'm the one that decides or chooses, depending upon what format you want to use there, on how I'm going to interpret and respond to this event and the experience I'm having in the moment. And how I choose to interpret it and respond to it is a very powerful active force in creating my actual experience. Christian goes on and writes, and yet in reality, in a reality that is built upon loving consciousness, those who have passed from us are truly no more than a thought away. For unlike the body and its crude outcomes that are so temporary, the love between two people is absolutely real and cannot die. Love, a capital L love, supersedes muscle and bone. Love is the force of incalculable power that fuels creation itself. Thus, when someone we love experiences the death of their body, let us remember our love for them. Let us take consolation that we have not truly lost them, for they exist right now. Not less than they were, but in fact as much, much more than they were when they were just constrained to the physical body. And it just comes to me to talk about one of the more, to my mind, silly, ridiculous conventions in thought that has been proposed. A lot of us have been taught this as a solid truth. Some of us have heard that other people do this. Some of us have never heard of this. And yet there's a very popular, somewhat pervasive thought that says the degree to which I put myself through agony when my pet dies, when my child dies, when my lover dies, when my lover moves away, when my friend moves to another town when I'm in college or grade school, the degree to which I put myself through agony is directly related to how much I loved that person. And I'm here to just introduce the question about how bizarre can our thoughts get. I think that's a truly bizarre thought. And one way that I work with people in therapy for the last 50 some years is to have them, when they're agonizing about their loss, whether it's their dog or their cat or their snake or their lizard or their son or their daughter or their husband or their wife or their mother or father, at some point in time, I ask them, do you really think that this person, that this entity that you had so much love for, would want you to be in agony right now? Would want you to be unable to find joy in life? Would want you to be unable to move forward? If there is anything to the idea of consciousness, if there is anything to Anita Morjani's experience or Eben Alexander's experience of life after the physical body had shut down to any point that our medical professionals could say that there's consciousness or life there. And yet they had these vivid, powerful, extensive experiences during a period of time that our medical science says they're clinically dead and the body is dead. If there's any truth to that at all, then the question begs to be asked, does this entity that's still in existence, although not in a body, does that entity want you to be suffering if you had such great love for each other? So please, if you're one of those people who's been trained into this or had the thought, or maybe you stumbled across the thought and you said, oh, it makes really good sense to me, that the more I cry, the more I wail and gnash my teeth, the longer I'm in depression, the more it means I truly loved the person that left. And I'm just here to invite you to question the sanity and the silliness of that kind of a thought experiment. It reminds me of how Guy Finley says, we're taught to think that the more angry we get, the more we know we're right and the people around us are wrong. And he says the fact of the matter is my anger doesn't prove I'm right. My anger only proves in that moment I don't know what rightness is. Well, the same thing here. My wailing and gnashing of teeth and falling into depression and not being able to move forward with my life is nothing related to how much I loved the person who left. These things are not related except in my thought. Because I've been there, I've experienced this acceptance of the ending of a relationship and doing a termination process, grief and loss process, whatever you want to call it. It's available on the MindShiftersAcademy.org website under the educational materials page. And I've demonstrated to myself that what I used to do to generate so much upset and depression and grief and doom and gloom is not necessary. And it was certainly never related to how much I loved or didn't love a person who was in my life. So the second and the final essay in this grouping titled Death, Christian titles this, Death Need Not Be Feared. And Christian writes, being afraid of death is like the dreamer being scared to wake up, because the dreamer doesn't remember waking life while he or she is asleep. Metaphorically speaking, you are in the dream right now. Listening to me read this book, sitting wherever you are, walking, driving, you're in the dream right now. You may not remember what it is to be, quote, awake, close quotes, because such amnesia, such a forgetting of your spiritual being is necessary so that you buy into this dream so you can have the experience as though it's real. Nevertheless, you are not just the dreamer. What you truly are is too vast for words to articulate. And entire other reality systems, much more real than this one, are available to you when you, quote, wake up, close quotes, when you drop the body, when you're no longer encumbered by these intense constraint sets that you temporarily agree to embody so you can have experiences you can't have any other way, so you can contribute to creation, so you can choose for love in more and more challenging environments and situations so that you contribute to the body of energy they call love and compassion more actively every day you're alive. And you don't have to choose that as your purpose in life, but it's recommended. Try it on. That's the invitation in this work. Christian goes on here and writes, does it hurt when you end a dream and wake up? For most of us, the answer is no. The transition's very natural. Christian writes, every day we wake up from our previous night's sleep, and typically we think nothing of it. Physical death is a similarly effortless transition. Countless near-death experiencers confirm that there is no pain in the transition itself from physical life to the non-physical one. The body might be experiencing pain as it goes through its ending or cessation, but in fact, the opposite is true for the consciousness, for the spirit, for the soul, whatever word you want to use for it. The transition is incredibly liberating and full of unspeakable love and joy. So much so that many people report wishing that they could stay and only deciding after some considerable kind of wrestling with the ideas to return to continue their physical experience. Christian writes, living in the physical, dreaming that you're actually form, that you're actually a body, this is the much more constraining and potentially challenging state. We're free to thrive here, to fully enjoy the contrast and all the experiences that this human life has to offer. However, we do not need to fear the end of it in the least. Death is release, the great liberator, a joyful awakening into our much more fundamental and native state, the spiritual body. Not only do we not need to fear that, we can in fact look forward to it as the wonderful, expansive, celebratory return home that it truly is. And indeed, when we dismiss the specter of fear of death, we're able to live our lives more in joyful alignment with the immortal spirits that we truly are. So the invitation in this work is to wake up to the fact that even while you're still in the body, you can start to tap into your awareness of yourself as more than the body. You can start to tap into, as we're reading the past few days, tap into knowledge beyond the intellect. Tap into wisdom that isn't bound to words and thoughts in a linear time series. So what will it take for you to explore and start to dismantle some of the fearful thoughts you might have around death? I fully understand that some people have a much harder time with this than others. Some people have such a relatively easy time with this that they actually go into jobs that have them helping people in their end of lifetime. The interview, the documentary, Consider the Conversation, is one that talks about helping people have the difficult conversations about what do I want to do at the end of my life? Where do I want to die when it's time to die? Do I want to die in a hospital or do I want to die at home? What kind of life prolonging measures do I want to sign up for? Or do I want to make sure that they don't try with me, whether it's a feeding tube or a respirator or CPR, if my heart stops, if I'm in the hospital and things like that. These are critically important conversations that many people are very uncomfortable having. So in this work, we could just read this book and maybe have some thoughts about it and move on. And there might be some people who are listening to this saying, okay, it's enough about death, move on. Let's talk about the joyful life stuff and spirit. But the invitation we have with this kind of work is to understand that there's a part of me that wants to rush away from the conversation about death and dying, and death is a transition rather than an ending. I have access to tools now. I can use the EFT tapping, the breath work, the reality management worksheet, the 3 early memories of conflict in conjunction with the EFT tapping and the reality management worksheet, and I can start to unload the baggage that makes me bristle and want to run away from a conversation around death. And the more I can do that, the more comfortable I can get with that, with the inevitability of that, the more I can bring a loving presence, a compassionate presence, a good active listening presence to people who are closer to that process than I am, or to people around me when I'm near that process. I can bring understanding and compassion to their discomfort. But only if I've actively worked to dismantle my negative thoughts and therefore the emotions that I generate by pouring my mind energy into those thoughts, my negative thoughts and emotions around ideas about death, about the death process itself. It wasn't too long ago, it might have been a few years now, but we've had conversations on this show where people are just terrified. What if there's nothing after death? What if I don't have a soul that goes on after? And my answer is, who cares? Because all of the things I might do to make my life better in the present moment, to experience more joy, to be more loving, to be more open and compassionate, to be more able to go with the flow of life, all the things I might do improve my quality of life right now, because this present moment is the only time we actually have. And if the teachings are accurate, then as I improve my moment to moment, day to day quality of life, today, I'm making the world a better place for everyone, both in this new present moment and in any moments that might unfold even after I've dropped the body. The bottom line is, if I choose for fear, I'm adding energy to that discomfort, that uncomfortable realm, and I'm radiating that energy out into the field of life around me. Some people call it the quantum soup, the quantum potential. And we're inviting people in this work to stay clearly focused within themselves about what they're choosing to pour their mind energy into. Which thoughts are you choosing for yourself right now, in this moment? Because as you do that, you are choosing what you will create. So, what's getting resonated for you as I read these 2 essays on death? Death is not the end, and death need not be feared. What gets stirred up that is less than loving? If you so choose, you can pick up a reality management worksheet, or right now, if you call in, we can do a worksheet with you to help you dismantle any negative energies you might have around death and dying.
Dr. Tim?
Yes.
I know that Michael Ryce talks about if we were to clear our generational errors, false thinking, if we were to be completely in forgiveness and love, but I'm not saying it the way he does, and it's funny, he said it many times. He says that we would not die, our physical bodies would not die.
Yeah. Yeah, he does say that.
And
I've talked about how that's not my view. It's not the view of the teachings that resonate most with me.
yeah,
It's a point of divergence, and the bottom line for me is it doesn't really matter because of what I just said here right at the end. Because the more I use these tools and make my present moment life experience more loving and compassionate and joyful, I don't care if it is going to translate to, oh, my body's going to live longer or never die. I just care about this present moment.
mm-hmm.
And if I choose fear about how someday I'm going to die, where am I experiencing that fear? In this present moment. Am I dying right now? No.
Yeah.
So what am I doing? I'm throwing away the potential to have this moment be joyful, compassionate, blissful. And, if
Well,
you want to talk about it from an intellectual perspective, you can get into all kinds of discussions. But, you know, as these teachings are trying to tell us, that's just thoughts about thoughts about thoughts.
Well, I've had two experiences that have helped a lot in dismantling fear about dying, but also just getting older has helped. For instance, just being my age now, I feel as if, wow, I got to live this long. This is really an amazing thing. I'm very lucky. A lot of people don't get to live this long. That's one thing. Another thing is, I was walking in the winter about 7 years ago now and slipped and fell on black ice and broke my wrist. And I became absolutely present and clear. Here's this badly broken wrist, but I wasn't feeling pain. It's as if when you get to that point, it may be very different than what you think it might be. I was walking a dog. I got the dog's leash. I wrote, "Beware black ice" on the snow that was extending beyond where I fell. I got the dog up to his owner's, my son's house. His wife was there. She took me to the emergency room and I got fixed up, but I wasn't concerned about any. I felt just very present and clear. And I thought, boy, if something kicked in which spared me from the terrible pain that should have happened, but I saw that at hospice too, working. Most people go through a transition where they keep them comfortable and lucid at the same time so that they can be with their family, say goodbye. I mean, there were a couple of cases where this wasn't the case, but I wonder if, I just don't know how to think about that, because the general rule was it was a gentle transition and gorgeous in some cases, reconciliations between estranged family members. We had a neighbor who we watched out for many years who ended up in hospice, and she had not spoken to her grandson in umpteen years, and Tim called him and flew him here from California to greet his grandmother, and they had this amazing connection at the end of her life. It's almost as if she waited for him to come. It's just a gorgeous thing. And so
Yes.
what I feel when you're reading this, I I don't know if there's life after death, but hearing what Christian Sundberg says, I feel this incredible excitement, whether it ends up being true, but right now it's very exciting to hear this.
There it is. And so there we have a choice. Do we generate fear or do we generate excitement?
Mm,
And, the Way of Mastery and Course in Miracles give us lessons that say things like, you are the one who creates all the meaning this moment has for you. So are
hmm
you going to create a meaning that resonates fear for you? Or are you going to create a meaning that resonates excitement for you?
Yeah. I love that you're reading this. These are conversations that ought to happen. And I also have many questions about the prolonging of life when quality of life has gone by, where family finances are going down this drain of maintaining a body that needs to exit, keeping a body alive when it's not necessary, when it isn't wise or it isn't comfortable. Often it's because the person who's dying is afraid, but most often it's because the family feels guilty about wanting them to go.
Well, and because the system pressures us
Mm-hmm.
to use all of these extreme measures and technologies to keep the biological body functioning long past any time
Mm,
when there's any hope for the person to heal and recover and have a quality of life that's worth living.
yeah.
And it's a mess, right? We have these messes because of our language, because of our belief systems, because of our
Mm-hmm.
structures of the medical profession and their oath to do no harm, etc.
Yeah.
And so then they've defined death as harm.
Yeah. Big mistake.
Yeah, and there's a lot more nuance there that would could easily be brought into the conversation. And they
Right.
actually have places where there's assisted suicide,
Yeah.
and it makes sense to people because here's a situation with this body that's not going to be healing, and it's going to have this slow, inexorable march to the time it stops functioning, and there's a lot of, discomfort involved and all that, and expense to try and keep the body, breathing and the blood pumping for what? For somebody who's laying in a bed and doesn't really want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that's true.
and when people have had the clarity to understand that that actually happens and separate it out from the other very real and unloving stuff that happens when people say, well, I want my inheritance, pull the plug on him, and he's not ready to go,
Yeah.
right? So we have to understand that this is not a simple thing at
No.
certain levels of complexity within our culture and our legal system and our finances. It's not a simple thing. But when it comes to the individual and the energy that I'm generating in this moment as we talk about death and dying, that is pretty simple. I
Mm-hmm.
am doing that to myself,
Mm,
and I don't need to continue doing that. I can
right.
find peace in whatever life is bringing me. That's one of the keys to this
Mm,
body of work. I can choose for love over fear in every present moment.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish there were a better word than assisted suicide, like, you know, gentle transition incorporated or something, some different word. I have a niece who's becoming a death doula, and I'm eager to talk to her about what she's learning. So anyway, it's good. But your question that you have for Christian Sundberg, and I forget what it was. You said you'd like to reword something with
Well,
him.
he said that the death of a loved one causes us great pain,
Oh, causes. I gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
And I was saying I can generate tremendous upset, sadness, and pain or not.
Mm-hmm. He'll love that. I bet he'll love that.
You know,
It's sort
that's
of like it's sort of like what you did with Micah,
Micah
Micah
Salabarios.
Salabarios. Yeah, you gave him some ways of rewording things, and he got really excited about that. It's almost as if you're helping him write his book, his next book. Good word changes.
Well, and that idea comes from firsthand lived experience, not some theory.
Yeah.
And the firsthand lived experience, I make it available absolutely free to people in the process. I call it now a process for grief and loss, or I call it saying goodbye to good people without saying goodbye to good memories.
Mm.
That's available on the MindShiftersAcademy.org website on the educational materials page. And in that seminar that I presented, and you can hear the recording of it, I talk about how I was one of those people who would go for weeks and months in a fog and a dark cloud over my head when I would have to say goodbye to somebody that was important in my life.
Mm.
Until I got into graduate school and I met this woman, Pat, and we were thrown into working together, and she dragged me kicking and screaming into awareness of a process she called termination. I've later, because of the Schwarzenegger movies and the Terminator and all of that stuff, and
Uh-huh.
people don't like the word termination, I've renamed it saying goodbye to good people without saying goodbye to good memories. But because of her guidance and my willingness to engage the process, I no longer go through that depth of depression and grief and loss when someone leaves my life. And there have been a number of people and friends
Mm.
that I've used that process with, and then to basically just sidestepped all of the wailing and gnashing of teeth, all of the weeks and months and years of deep grief and sadness after the fact. So
Is that
I've had the experience that it can be different. Go ahead.
is that partly because we're connected and you can keep them with you, whether there's been a termination or not? I mean, I think of my dad. I had a great dad, and I feel as if he's just here. And it isn't if I think he's conscious of being here or not, but he's in my heart. And that's as close as you can get. And so I just enjoy his company.
Which is
Or,
wonderful. And that's what we encourage people to do. What we've also understood is that one of the dynamics that is very common is that people have a loss and then they'll be living their life and they won't really have processed the loss. They won't really have done a process like saying goodbye to good people without saying goodbye to good memories. And they just pretend that
mm,
everything's going to be okay. And then they're driving around living their life and they'll see something that reminds them of their loved one and they get stabbed in the heart with this gut-wrenching pain and
mm,
they flinch away from it and I'm going to a meeting, I can't cry now, and they just shove it all away
yeah,
because of the pain, because of the grief, because of the need to recognize, hey, this person is not coming back in a physical body. It's never going to be
mm,
the same again.
mhm,
And because I haven't coached myself into being able to just cry the few tears and breathe through the discomfort and the realization of the loss and let the other good memories come up with it, because I haven't done that, I push it all away.
mm,
And what I don't realize in that moment is I'm also pushing away all the good memories and all the life lessons and
mm,
all the distilled learnings I could take from that and make very active and give myself ready access in the library of my mind to those things. I can't do that when I'm running from the pain of the grief or the sadness or the loss or the anger at the person for leaving. How dare they use so many drugs that they ended their life, in their 30s or 40s or 50s and abandoned me. And so I'll have thoughts like that. And rather than processing through those, if I hold on to them and I push them away because they're too painful, what I'm also doing is pushing away my access to the good memories and the good life learnings. And so eventually, what happens to many people is the only sense of connection they feel to this person who was very active in their lives is their grief. And I've literally had people say to me, I don't want you to get rid of my grief. It's my only connection to my son, my daughter, my father, etc. And that's when I know they have never done a process like the one we make available on the MindShiftersAcademy.org website on the educational materials page. It's absolutely free, and it's just a couple audio files you can download and listen to, and a PDF you can print off and use as your guide for stirring up the memories and distilling the learnings from them and cataloging them and feeling the emotions and demonstrating to yourself that allowing yourself to feel those raw, powerful emotions is not going to overwhelm you. It's not going to crush you. It's not going to last forever and drive you into insanity. And that's the only way that I know from that firsthand experience of it to be able to breathe and soften and cry through those things and then catalog those memories and distill the learnings and prove to myself that that process is healing rather than hurtful. That's the only way I know to end up being okay with the flow of life, which includes someone leaving. Otherwise, I sit over here with my thought that, you know what, that's wrong. They shouldn't have left. They were too young. They made bad choices and they abandoned me, or whatever it is that I sit here in my thoughts that are basically fighting against the flow of life.
Right.
It's literally me walking out into the middle of the Mississippi River and facing upstream and screaming at the water that it should be going the other direction. It's just as useful as that. The Mississippi River isn't going to reverse its course because I scream at it. Life is not going to change its flow just because I think it's wrong or bad. However, as I make a choice to judge life as wrong or bad as it's unfolding, I create a certain tight, tense, angry, hurt, grief-filled experience for myself in the moment, or I breathe and soften and allow and create a very different experience of the miracle of life flowing in, through, as, and around me in this moment. And I get to participate in it in all of its depth and richness. Choice is mine. Fight against life or breathe into it and go with the flow and count it a miracle and a blessing that I'm here at all. That's our invitation. These are the choices that we can make moment to moment. So, final thoughts for you for this hour, Susan?
No, that's good. Thanks, Dr. Tim. Good reading.
Thank you.
Is that the end of his, did you finish it?
Oh no,
Okay.
I'm only in the second part of the book,
Okay.
and the next essay I was going to read is under a different theme heading. The theme heading is "You Are Already There," and there's 6 essays there. The one that I'll read starting tomorrow is titled "You Never Left Home." But we are getting down to the end of the second section. And then in the third section, it's a bunch of the questions and answers that he offers. So we have plenty more to read from his book.
Good.
All right. I'll remind us all that Michael and Jeanie are playing a best of on Podbean for this next hour. You might be lucky and be able to click into them on Zoom. I have not had success doing that, but apparently they're broadcasting it on Zoom as well.
Well,
And I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings.